Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Joanna Smart from Business Review, and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have OSIsoft with us today, who will be discussing the secret formula for becoming a data-driven decision maker. Today's guest speaker is Peter More, Industry Principal. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform on 24. You'll notice that this webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect for any reason, please just click on the link that you received via email to rejoin the session. In order to ask questions, you can send them in via the questions widget. Just type them into the box at the top left-hand corner of your screen and click submit. We will allocate some time at the end of this session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. If you click on the survey widget, there are a few questions in there for you to answer in order to provide feedback. You can do this during or immediately after the webinar. Please use the yellow help widget if you require any assistance, and you can move, resize and maximize any of the windows in front of you to get a better view of the slides. But now, please allow me to welcome Peter.
Thank you, Jo, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Peter More. I am working for OSIsoft as an industry principal, and as you might hear on my dialect, I'm a Swedish citizen. I do live in southern Sweden, but I have the luxury and pleasure to work globally with majority of the leading pharma and biopharma customers, where I help them to generate success and help them to understand and collect data. So in this webinar today, I'm going to go through a number of steps. So this is the agenda for the next coming 40 plus minutes. I'm going to take an opportunity to introduce OSIsoft, the company I am representing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges for the life sciences industry. I'm going to talk about the trends and the reality, and some of the aspects of how to become a data-driven organization, or how to become a data-driven decision maker. And at the end, I'm also going to talk about and share with you some real use cases from the market. So OSIsoft has been around for more than 35 years doing the same thing, building up an infrastructure in collecting data. And we do that in many different markets. And pharma and biopharma are one of the markets where we are very intensely used in the industry today. And the very important thing here is that the product we are offering is a commercial off-the-shelf product. It is not a customized or tailored product. It's a product that can be fully validated and implemented to meet the various type of regulatory compliance part, both in US as well as in Europe. So we have been around and working with a large majority of the pharma. So I do think that somewhere around 23 out of the top 25 pharma and biopharma customers are today using the PI system and partnering with OSIsoft as a data infrastructure partner in collecting and contextualizing and consuming data. So what do we now see in the industry? We see a number of pillars. So some of the challenges are of course related to compliance, meaning that we need to meet this type of compliance to be able to operate and to sell our products. These can be related to GMP and related to topics like audit trail, Part 21, Part 11. They can also be related to data integrity, validation, and so on. We also see various demands in becoming and improving the reporting. And here we work a lot with electronic batch records, and now more recently also with review by exceptions, and how to move into the digital era and using digital data in various ways. Another type of topic is the data transfer, and that is in the technology in scaling up and developing a process so we gain maximum process understanding and process knowledge, which can be used to maximize the real time, right first time, improve knowledge, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, it's about the operational excellence. How can we operate and manage our processes at the plant or within an enterprise or even outside of an enterprise, as we now more and more outsource a lot of our operations, working with CMOs and even CDMOs in the development era. So if you take a look at the overview and some of the perspectives, I have compared here the life science, the biopharma industry with the semiconductor industry. So if you take a look at some of the KPIs, like the OE in the semicon, it's fairly high. In pharma, it's highly variating from low to modest or even high values. The process variability or process capability is significantly higher in the pharma industry, where there are a lot of unwanted or ununderstood variability. And then, of course, when it comes to production lead time, the production time in pharma is tremendously long. It can take up to half a year to produce a product from its start until it's reached the customer at the end. So what the digitalization can then help us to do is to allow our subject matter expert to access and understand and consume the information and the data, so he or she can make the right decision at the right time. And ideally, we would like the information and the knowledge to find the various type of decision maker whenever needed, or whenever he or she want or need that information for any type of decision. So I have categorized the pharma industry in 3 typical dimensions. The first dimension is about time, or time to market and development. Here we need, in a very fast way, develop a process and a product. So we need to maximize the knowledge, minimize the risk, and to gain the best proper risk assessment, and in establishing that type of process to meet the various type of specification. And we need to do that effectively and also very quickly. So time is a critical factor or critical dimension. Another dimension that we operate in is the ecosystem. So in the pharmaceutical world, we are a player in a big complex ecosystem, meaning that we have various type of material vendors, various equipment vendors, maybe also different type of service vendors. We work with CMOs and CROs and CDMOs. We have, in many cases, often many different sites and operations, locations where we are operating. And of course, we also need to manage and cope with various type of regulatory agencies in how to submit our filing and also how to let them to do inspection and assessment of our plants. So it's a fairly complex environment which we need to operate in. And the last dimension is our own corporate information, meaning that we work with a large number of sensors generating a lot of data on the lowest level, on the sensor level, but all the way up to the different assets or the equipment that we use into the unit operations, into the plants, and of course all the way up to the enterprise. But even above that, we work in communities. Now we start to interact more with our customers, with our partners, and in the ecosystem. So that go back into the ecosystem part. So these are 3 complex dimensions which we need to cope with in the pharmaceutical industry today and also in the future. I think, and I see, being part of this for the last 20 years or so, that the industry is moving towards a lot more data driven, meaning that analytics is becoming a very, very essential part. We need to use analytics and data to gain and verify our knowledge in how we are developing and scaling up and building our processes and products. We need also to have analytics for the analytics, meaning that we have chemical analytics, biological analytics, and which we need to use to understand how the processes are operating. We also need to use analytics in terms of operational excellence, in helping us to do troubleshooting, out of specification investigation, non-conformity or non-compliant, and of course many other things which we also need to do these days in managing energy and managing material and water, but also to do condition-based or even predictive type of maintenance things on our equipment and resources and assets we are operating. But analytics is also coming now into the compliance part, where we use analytics to do, for example, real-time release testing. We also are encouraged to do CPV or OPV, and that is a significant part of that is related to analytics. But of course, we also have quality by design. So I will try to go through this a little bit more in detail in a few minutes. So I'm going to talk now about the trends and the reality in which we are operating today. And here, I think by talking to a large number of pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical organizations globally, I think the most hot topic today is about the data integrity. So what is data integrity? That is the summary coming from the guidance or the draft guidance from FDA in how to manage and how to generate trustworthy data that we can use to consume and make decisions in real time and close to real time. It's very much about the trustworthiness, to have the good metadata and to understand these things better and to use the data and share data within our organizations. The other thing I see when talking to pharmaceutical organizations is the topic of CPV, or continued process verification. Also, this follows various type of guidances, both the European as well as an American guidance. And there are a large number of discussions and implementations and presentations around CPV these days. And it's a matter of doing this reporting, the CPV reporting on the batch level, but also on a campaign or periodic level and on an annual level. And to look at what is important for that particular process and a particular product that is produced, that can involve critical material, can involve critical process parameters, and of course how those are affecting and influencing critical quality attributes, how the outcome is of our process. We would like to understand how these things fit together, and we would also like to act on these things as we are operating the processes. So the CPV is about understanding variation and the ability to understand and show and demonstrate what we should do when we see variations. So it's going from the process design into the OQ, IQ, PQ, but now we do this over and over again for each single batch or lot or material that we are shipping into the market. We need to demonstrate that we have a good capability and a good understanding in doing things. So various things are involved in doing CPV these days. I think that there are three main pillars. It's about the data management, and how to access and combine and structure and contextualize all the data. Maybe not just data that we are generating, but also maybe data that is generated by people or organizations generating critical material. That can be, for example, some of the excipients, some of the media, or some of the API, if we work with CMOs. But we also need to have good tools and systems to be able to do the analytics. Statistical analytics, multivariate analytics, and other type of data analytics that can be based on various type of machine learning technologies. But last but not least, we also need a system and a tool to manage and how we should act on the information we are generating, and how to share that and document that and implement that and do ongoing improvements in our processes. So we are always meeting the various type of target criteria. So here I leave it to you.
Thank you very much. So this is the first poll of the session today. Audience members, if you could choose the answer that's relevant to you and click submit. The question is, where are you or your company when it comes to data integrity? And the possible answers are not started, just starting or researching, initiated a program in the last year, program in operation, or not sure / not applicable. What sort of answers are you expecting to see from this, Peter?
Okay, thank you, Jo. Here we see what is the current answer. So we see that a very quick analysis on this live survey, live poll, is that the majority of the organization have already started to implement things, and a few have it already in operation. That makes me very happy to see that the data integrity seems to be a minor issue than my first thought by talking to many of the organizations today. And of course, there might be some organizations or people on this call that it's not applicable for. I thank you very much for this quick answer and from this poll. Let's continue. What we do also see now in the product and process development era is the implementation of using quality by design, or QBD technologies, which is a way to define and develop processes and products according to a more scientific, maybe, and more risk-based approach. And that is all based on various type of risk and knowledge management. And we have had the opportunity to listen in our user conferences with OSIsoft from presentations from, for example, Shire, where they have developed and presented in how they see the pharmaceutical development. It's about the knowledge management, and the data is now the main product, because that is really defining how people are and processes should be operated. And there are also various type of guidances and tools and systems that helps us to accomplish this. And a few of those are coming from ICH, according to ICH Q8, Q9, and Q10, which I think are excellent getting together and guidances in the industry these days. We see that the QBD and PAT sits very tight together, because if we are developing a process according to QBD, we have a very good understanding of which are the critical process parameters and critical material attributes, and how do those affect and influence the quality at the intermediate quality or the final quality of the product and material that we are producing. And if we are able then to apply this with the QBD approach, we can then use the data in slightly different ways. So here I have tried to build up a schematic picture in how we can use CMAs, meaning raw material attributes and control set points and other things, and then using information that is collected throughout the manufacturing processes, meaning time resolved data that can be process parameters from different type of unit operations and batches and so on and so forth, and try to understand and how these are influencing our quality, critical quality attributes at the end. And that is becoming more and more essential when we start to produce more complex type of products, meaning products that are of higher complexity rather than the small API, small chemical, well-defined substances that we used to produce in the past, where we had a very good analytical capability to analyze these things. But now, when we move into more complex products and complex systems, we also need to look into the processes, because the process itself contains a lot of information about how we are operating the various type of systems. And that gave us a very, very high complex development environment. So here I have borrowed a few slides from Shire again, in talking about at Shire alone, they claim they have 323 various sources of information identified across their R&D landscape, meaning these are different type of tools and systems and applications that are containing or generating data that is of essential for our process and knowledge and process understanding. And if you look into a little bit more detail, we have all these different sources that need to be combined and contextualized to be able to be consumed by the various type of analytics layer on top. So an analytics tool like YAMP, SAS, SAP HANA, Discover, and Spotfire, Statistica, and so on and so forth are commonly used in this industry. But they all rely on the data. Can we trust the data? And how can we consume the data that is generated from our small scale, the medium scale, pilot plant, and all the way up to the manufacturing plant, so we can understand how we are operating things and which are the things that we need to care about in our operation. So this is very well defined in ICH Q8 to Q10. It's about the knowledge management. It's about the systematic approach to acquiring, analyzing, storing, disseminating information related to products, manufacturing processes, and its components. So it's about combining everything and to understand what is of importance for the current point. And that might not just be information that is generated in-house. That can also be data and information that has been generated by your ecosystem, meaning suppliers or partners. We also see another thing that is going on in the industry. It's more common these days to work with CMOs and CDMOs. And on the left-hand side here, you see a slide, a picture coming from Janssen, a part of Johnson & Johnson. And they have approximately 2,000 SKUs, meaning stock keeping units, 2,000 materials that they are shipping into the market. And none of those 2,000 are produced completely internally, meaning that they have various contract organizations or partners that are producing things as going into one or many or all of these 2,000 various different products they are producing, of course with different type of complexity. So the data integrity here is rather complex because that also involves the data that is generated by these CMOs or CDMOs or various type of partners. So the challenge here, as I see it, is what control do you have over the data or that is generated at your site or from the suppliers, so that FDA or other regulatory authorities can trust and rely on the data that is generated. We also see other things in the industry these days. One, which we see very often in the bioprocess area, is the use of single-use or disposable technologies, but also the use of parallel systems. I think these type of tools are excellent because they help us to scale up and to also generate a large amount of data much quicker. We can now do experiments quicker than ever. We can focus on the experimental work, but we also need to consume, we need to use the data to make the right decision, to apply, for example, design of experiment technologies and to apply predictive analytics technologies to understand which are the various critical set points of the materials and how do they affect our ability to operate and the ability to meet quality. And with the new technologies, I do think that this will help us in generating not just more data in a quick way, but also how to structure and templatize data so we can be more effective in doing the analysis. Maybe we can also streamline and automate these things. Other things is, of course, we hear about that on each conference nowadays. It's about continuous manufacturing, both in API, but also in pharma. Now we hear more about that also in biopharma. And that puts a lot of stress on us because we now need to use new technology, a new type of control system, new sensors, which are also then consuming new type of data, PAT or analytics data, like spectroscopy and particle size distributions and similar, in a completely different way to be able to drive the process to verify that we're meeting the quality specification and product specification as we have to do. But of course, there are many advantages coming from that, and I might know or might see that it's not applicable for all type of processes, but for many of them, we will see a lot of new innovation coming out of this continuous manufacturing era. But that will also lead us into another type of trend where we see examples coming in the industry these days. For example, I've seen some papers and some presentation by Amgen of using advanced type of control, advanced process control, using MPC or model predictive control technologies, using data to understand and how to adjust the processes in real time. So we are able to meet the specification, but also improve our productivity, increase tighter yield, and of course also meet quality specification and CQAs as we have to. So what are then the formulas to become an effective data-driven decision maker these days? First of all, we need to have access to the data. Secondly, we need to understand how to structure and contextualize the data, how to format the data so we can get the information out of the data. Because the data itself is not the same thing as information. Information is only when we are able to understand and interpret and use the data, consume the data. And if we're then able to consume and use the data, we can then have intelligence or make business decisions to take action. If the action is for increased operation or reduced risk or increased productivity, depends of course on where we are and who we are. So there are many different levels and aspects to look at when it comes to analytics. Of course, what is our desired outcome? Is it related to reporting? Is it related to product efficiency or KPI or predicted quality? The next thing, what do we want to do? Do we want to have a diagnose? Do we want to have a predictive event? Do we need to have a report? Where is data situated? Do we have the data in the operational landscape, meaning in the automation layer? Is the data coming from LIMS? Is the data coming from building management? Is the data coming from IT systems like MES and ERP systems? And what type of data do we need? There are many different types of data. And then the next question, which is very, very complex here, is how do we structure and consume this data? How do we clean? How do we trust? And how do we interpret the data? So we can start to use various type of analytics, statistics for this data. And of course, that is its own type of subject in how to build models and how to validate and trust these models. But last but not least, and how do we do reporting, visualization, notification, and automation on all of these different aspects? So the data infrastructure approach is then to access all the different sensors that are coming from DCS, control systems, SCADA system, PAT systems, and so on, but also to have additional IoT or IIoT sensors that bring us information about what is going on in our ecosystem or in our process, or maybe even outside of our process. So we need to collect all this data, we need to enhance and contextualize and deliver the data so we can use the data for descriptive, diagnostics, or even predictive analytics. So people can make the right decision at the right time in our product development, also in our process and operations. So the challenge is to get hold of all the data and describe what is going on in the different type of systems and environment we are working with. And the challenge here that I have experienced many times is that the data scientists or the statisticians or mathematicians that are working with data, they spend a significant part of their time in accessing the data, to filter, to prepare, to contextualize the data, rather than to do the value-adding exercise in generating the information and presenting the data in various type of reports, dashboard, and other things that can be used and consumed by the operators and the business people in their operation. And what are the things that can go wrong? Just to give a very short flavor on various things that are some challenges. We can, of course, have communication failure, meaning that a sensor, a number of sensors might not have the communication at a certain time. Then we might need to manage and cope with that. Maybe we need to do the best type of interpretation. We might need to have a best guess or use lost good value, or maybe re-upload the data if it is not lost. We also need a way to cope with various type of starting times, especially critical when we cope with batches or finite processes, meaning that we have sub-batches or phases and sequences and so on. We also have uneven data spacing, meaning that some sensors are very quick, some others are slower, and especially in the bioprocess area, some of the sensors only happen to like IPC data once a day or once every 8 hours and so on. And we need to have systems and tools that can cope with that uneven data spacing or spacing of data sampling. And of course, we also very often see when we start to look and interpret data that we have spikes and problems with the data. Sometimes these problems are not problems because they tell about something that is a real problem that we need to look into. Sometimes it is a problem with the sensors or the tool or the equipment we are using. We also need a way to distinguish between real problems and artifacts problems. So there are many, many different ways and challenges which we need to cope with. And the challenge we see is that we need to provide the data and the information and the intelligence and the knowledge to the various type of decision maker. And these decision makers are all over an organization, such as within a pharmaceutical company. We work with end users in the process operations, in R&D, with MSAT and PAT teams, in quality and quality assurance, management, just to mention a few. All of these different organizations are consuming or would like to consume data in a different way to make their informed decisions, to be able to operate and run their processes as good as they possibly can. Now we come to our last and second poll.
Thank you very much. So this is the second poll of the session. The question is, does your current data management environment support all your analysis needs? No, we store some data, little or no analysis. Data is in separate silos. Analysis is difficult. Partial data available. Analysis is possible. Most data is available but not contextualized for analysis. All data is available and contextualized for analysis. Or I don't know / not applicable. If you could choose the answer that's relevant to you and click submit. So I'll just run through those questions, the answers again. No, we store some data, little or no analysis. Data is in separate silos, analysis is difficult. Partial data available, analysis is possible. Most data is available but not contextualized for analysis. All data is available and contextualized for analysis. Or don't know, not applicable. If you could choose the answer that's relevant to you and click submit.
Thank you, Jo. Let's see if we have any answers. Yes, we have quite a few. It's quite even distribution here. So some are very happy with their analysis, and one part or significant part, they still have the data in various type of silos, and that is common. I see that all the time, also within very well organized organizations, because that is a big challenge. So that will bring us into some real world examples. So first example is coming from Novartis, and this is an example that has been presented at one of the OSIsoft users conferences. And we are organizing 2 major user conferences every year, one in Europe and one in US. The one in Europe is coming up in London in October 16 to October 19, so in approximately 4 or 5 weeks from now. So Novartis presented here a few years ago on how they developed the work center of the future. So they would like to develop a single source of the truth in how they are building up and collecting all the data that is generated from all the various types of SCADA, LIMS, DCS system into one single source of the truth. And they presented it a little bit like this. This was the traditional island type of interface where they have a large number of data generating sources, SCADA, DCS, and PAT systems, building management systems, and so on. Also lab IPC systems. And data need to be shared and sent from one place to another place into statistical analysis or multivariate analysis, into serialization, into LIMS, and into some historian type of systems, and could be combined with other type of systems. And that was, of course, extremely difficult and very difficult to manage, and it was very time consuming. So what they decided to do was to build up a simplified system that really could enable them to become more data driven. So they built one system where they connected all the data into this system. So that is the only real-time data infrastructure, the only source of the truth within the Novartis organization as presented here. And that helps them to do then various type of analytics, various type of decision making, and send data up into the business systems like ERP and MES system, but it also helps them to get that information and send that information back to the underlying type of SCADA, PAT, and building management system, so be able to operate in a more effective way. And this has helped them to increase their operability and improve their overall OE and many other things. Another use case is from the development in R&D. So this is an example coming from Shire that was presented back in 2016, and how they were developing and changing the development environment, and with the purpose of having all the scientists and engineers in the development should be able to do the analysis and analytics of their own experiments within less than 10 minutes after the experiment has been executed. And that is a very, very significant change compared to the prior change. And that really helped them to become much more data-driven and build up much better knowledge management. And that helped them to generate a larger number of projects without increasing the staff, without increasing their footprint in people and equipment, but just be able to do things more effectively, but also to gain better knowledge and better understanding. I also mentioned in the beginning about the EBRs and RB. We see implemented in the industry these days more and more of the RB, review by exceptions. So organizations are now starting to do the analysis and consumption of the electronic batch reporting, but doing that in a notifying way, meaning that they only look into the various type of reports whenever they are violating various type of rules or specifications. And that has helped, in this case, Genzyme, to save a significant amount of time compared to in the previous case when they have a manual review on their batch records. And this is now also implementation. I see that in many of the different industries. And this is a very good presentation by a person called Ryan Greeley from Genzyme from 2016. One case here is from Teva, one of the leading generics and biosimilar companies these days. And their challenges has been that they have hundreds of islands of data, as is common in the industry. And now they try to connect all these different islands into one single data infrastructure where the data is contextualized so it can be shared across their organization with people in engineering, maintenance, quality management, and of course MSAT and quality teams. What has been presented over the years is how important it is to structure the data. And one thing that we hear about over and over again is the ISA S88 and S95 approach to do it recipe-driven with the batch recipes. And there are a large number of very good and highly interesting presentations from ISA talking about how to build up that type of batch type of recipe. So here is just a summary of an example from J&J and Janssen and how they are able to develop the data platform and how to contextualize the data from all over their organization from the various type of sites. And in that site, they have a number of plants, and in the plant, they have a number of unit operations, and in the number of unit operations, they have a number of equipment, a number of sensors, and all is fully transparent and can be shared and viewed and consumed by people across their whole organization to be able to drive for excellence and drive for higher quality and higher productivity and reduced cost. So with that, I would like to summarize this presentation that the data infrastructure is very, very important. That helps to implement development, to do analytics, to do reporting, to become more data-driven. It's also critical to drive operational excellence and to improve or meet the various type of quality management. And of course, it is very important to become a real-time data-driven organization. And we see these days by various type of presentation from McKinsey and ARC and others that there are significant improvements in comparing with organizations that are data-driven with those that are not data-driven. Much higher revenue and higher profitability, and the shareholder value is significantly higher. So we have a large number of cases which we see these days, and many of our customers have taken these steps to become digital and to do the digital transformation, to use the data and consume the data in a completely new way. So with that, I open up the table for some questions, and we'll see if there are any questions. I would be very happy to answer them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yes, audience members, if you'd like to ask any questions, just send them in via the questions widget on the left-hand corner of your screen. So we've got a question here that is, we need to validate all our computer systems. How is that possible also with a global solution?
So what we see our customers are doing is that they normally develop a validation approach on an enterprise level, but they start to develop that on the site or plant level, and then they try to scale up, depends on the different type of architecture that the company has been using. So if they have a site-wide approach, they do it site by site, but if they have a more globalized approach or enterprise approach, they do it more enterprise-wide, and then they follow the various type of governance structure, following the various type of procedures and doing that. And we do have, I think, a handful of use cases of customers doing that, and they have presented at our user conferences. So Abbott, AbbVie, Sandoz are a few that come to my mind in how they have been doing that computer system validation and how they manage to do this validation overall.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So the next question we've got then is, to implement a global infrastructure is probably a long project. What would you say are the critical steps?
So I think you can answer that probably in two different ways. I think the best way to answer that would be to talk to various type of industry leaders that have already been doing that. We talk to them. We have customers that have taken this step a few years ago, and they are just part of rolling this out within their own organizations. And they are, in very many cases, they are very open to share their knowledge, because it's also in their interest to be able to develop the best practice that is not just unique for their own organization, but the best practice that is the same for any other organization, because the intellectual property is not in how they are running, let's say, a tableting press or a granulator or a fermenter. The intellectual property is in something else, but the data that is generated in all of these different type of equipment, tools, and processes preferably should be identical, whoever is operating that, if it is done by pharma company A or pharma company B or pharma company Z. The other way to answer that question is probably to do it stepwise, and I don't think that one should do it in a waterfall approach. I think it's better to start small and have a system that is scalable and scale up from a plant up to a site, from a site to next site or next plant and so on, rather than to develop a very comprehensive and complex overall structure. What I do think is of value, however, is to have some type of governance structure, but that also should meet the various type of data integrity guidelines and data management strategies that we see many of the companies now have. And we also saw that from the poll of just a few minutes ago, that most of many of you on this call do have that in place. So that, of course, is an essential part in being able to scale that across your organizations. If that is not the case, I would apply an agile approach, but also, of course, to interview and talk to people that have been through this.
Great, thank you very much. And another question we've got then is, what advice can you give if our organization is about to move towards a digital transformation, and where to start?
It's quite similar as the previous one, I do think, or at least maybe the answer is quite similar. So yeah, the approach in my view is to do it agile, and also to talk to organizations that have been through this, and to see and learn from those organizations. And as I said, they are very open. In many cases, they are very open to share their experience and best practices. And we see that, as I said earlier, we see that at the upcoming OSIsoft EMEA UC in London, people are willing to share and talk to each other. We have a huge library of use cases on our web page, where you can search of, I think, 1,700 use cases, which are all publicly available. Out of those 1,700, I guess 100 plus are from the biopharma community, where leading pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical companies are sharing their experiences and their know-how. Of course, they don't reveal their intellectual property and the secret part, but at least they share a lot of ideas and what is essential, and how have they become that successful. And last but not least, there are also a large number of movies and educational videos on YouTube and other forums where you can, of course, learn a lot from OSIsoft community, but also outside of our community. So I think there's a lot of information out there, but be agile. I think that is the best advice.
Thank you very much, Petter. So that's all we've got time for today. Any unanswered questions will be forwarded on and answered a bit later on after this webinar. But thank you very much for everybody for attending. And that just leaves me to thank Petter for what was a great presentation and to thank OSIsoft for sponsoring this session. To the attendees, you will receive an email shortly telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access this through our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on the website just mentioned and follow us on Twitter @BRWebinars for daily updates and join our LinkedIn group Business Review Webinars. Thank you once again, and I hope you all have a lovely day.